Hey there, Dave Paulides. Canadian Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video page. And we're back in the bunker, silo, deep underground. And the air quality in northern Montana is listed as unhealthy. And the wind is blowing and it's blowing more smoke in. We're getting it pretty bad right now, so I do not want to be outside. I was outside last night and I paid a big price. And we're going to talk about that right now. You ever think about the intersection that causes us harm, or that intersection that brings us great joy? Let's talk about the intersection that brings us great harm. John Mack was somebody that I followed for a long time. And he was a Harvard professor, and he was studying the UFO issue, and he was interviewing hundreds of people that had claimed abduction. And he came out with a monumental statement that said he thought that there was really something very sincere about this abduction phenomena. And then he was killed in an auto accident. He was a pedestrian in London. Turns out that there were two people named John Mack killed the same night in London. It's kind of weird. But what happened to cause that intersection of time and space between John and the car that hit him? Now, I was laying in bed thinking about this last night, and here's why. So we have some relatives in from out of town. They love the outdoors. So we left at about 4 o'clock to go inside a Glacier National Park after 5. That was the entry point where everything opens up and you don't need a permit. You need a park pass, but you don't need a special permit. So we were fishing in a place called Kintla, K-I-N-T-L-A Lake. Kintla Lake is the furthest north lake inside the park that you can get to by car. And it's not far at all from the Canadian border. Really mile, maybe 2 miles. So we fished the lake. It was pretty smoky, but the lake was glass, like glass. It was very pretty. I've been there many times. It's one of my most favorite places to go, because as you look up Kintla, it takes a turn, and I've always wanted to hike, and it would be probably a 3 or 4 hour hike to get to the point where it makes its turn. Look it up online, K-I-N-T-L-A Lake. It's beautiful. So we fish for a couple hours, get back in the truck, and we're driving home. And you get outside the lake and outside the park, and you get to a road called the North Fork Road. And North Fork goes from Columbia Falls, takes you up to the northern entrance to Glacier. Well, along that road, there's bear, moose, we've seen moose, lots of deer, everything you can imagine that is in Montana is found along that road. It's a pretty remote area. And about 99% of it, for the majority of it, is dirt. And some of it is rutted up really bad. So you can't drive too fast. But the speed limit on the asphalt portion is 65. And you'll learn when you come to Montana that whereas a normal road speed limit would be 40, in Montana it's 60, 65. They allow you to go as fast as almost as you want in a lot of places. Our freeway speeds are 80 miles an hour. So, yeah. So we transitioned from asphalt to dirt, and we're going south towards Columbia Falls. And it's about 10 o'clock. And whereas it may be dark at 10 o'clock in your area, it is just then getting dark up here because we're so far north. And I have 4 people in the truck, including me. And as I'm driving down the road, let me stop. Talking about the intersection of time and space. If we had fished a couple minutes longer at Kintla, the falling would never have happened. If we had walked a little slower exiting the lake, because we hiked in a couple miles, this wouldn't have happened. what happened? So we're going down the road, and I see up ahead of me, I'm going about 60, I see up ahead on a very straight stretch of asphalt road, and with my high beams on, I could see some deer on the left shoulder of the road. They hadn't crossed that other lane yet. And I started slowing down because I know that the deer up here, and just like in many areas, like to cross in front of traffic. I can't explain it. And all of a sudden, they take off running right across the lane, right towards the front of my car. And it's not like they were 100 yards in front of me. They started running about 50 feet in front of me. Now, let me tell you something. If you get into an accident on the roadway, you're much more likely to survive than if you get into an accident off the roadway. Here's what I mean by that. Long time ago, I went through massive amounts of driver training when I was a policeman. And then I taught driver safety for a number of years as a side job. Went through all kinds of training for that. And you'll learn that if you see an animal coming across the road, don't leave the roadway to avoid the animal. You can flip your car, you can hit a stationary object like a tree. You're better off to hit the animal. And you're not going to meet anybody that loves animals more than me, honest to God. But I know about the safety of you and me and our friends that you're better off just hitting the brakes as hard as you can, controlling the car. And I moved as far to the right shoulder as I possibly could to avoid this big deer. And damn, if the deer didn't run right in our path. Killed the deer immediately. And it hit it so hard, it just jettisoned it over into the other lane and off the road. And it destroyed the left front quarter of my truck. I don't care about the truck. I felt very bad for that deer. I felt very bad for the people that were with me because they were on vacation. And it was a tragic event. We had to pull to the side of the road, and we spent probably a half an hour trying to pull the fender off the tire and get it to a point where I could just, nurse the truck home. And we were able to get it home. I called my insurance agent today, and I explained what happened. When you hit a deer, it's a no-fault collision, so it isn't held against your insurance or against your points. But we had a long talk about these type of accidents, and he said, Dave, you would not believe the hundreds and hundreds of deer that are killed every year in northern Montana. And he said, if you look at the numbers nationwide, it would astound you. But I'm telling you this because of that cross section. That deer happened to be on the shoulder of that road at, let's say, 10:03. Dave happened to be coming down that road at 10:03. A couple of minutes either way, and this probably wouldn't have happened. So, what causes that intersection? I know when I was in college, we were talking about philosophy, and we were talking about similar things. And is our destiny pre-planned? Was I destined to get into that accident that last night? I don't know. I was thinking about it a lot today. It's the first accident I've been in years and years, and it bothered me over what happened. But I was happy that nobody got hurt. I was happy that the truck stayed under control, stayed on the road, and we were able to get home safely. But it makes you think. I haven't had a very good year. In fact, I'd say the first 7 months of this year have been one of my worst years of my life. And that last night didn't add to it. And I'm not talking about the truck. I could give a crap about the truck. But yeah, I hope my karmic cycle starts to change soon, because Dave needs some good mojo soon. But anyhow, I want to read you some cases before we get going into the, read you some letters before we get going into the cases today. First one, hi Dave, I want to take some time to write you and offer my condolences about your loss. I have a 15-year-old son, and I can't begin to imagine your pain. The amount of strength you display in dealing with such unimaginable situation is admirable. Your ability to recall events and details is impeccable, and I'm a big fan of your work. I guess my interest in the missing 411 and all other topics you cover stems from an experience I had in California where I live. I live in Santa Cruz. Well, actually, I used to, and now reside in Watsonville, a town about 15 miles south. Let me tell you, I used to live in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is about 30 miles south of San Jose. Go through the coastal range. And it's at the northern end of Monterey Bay. And it's a seaside community, and it was a great place to live. I liked it for many reasons, but just when I kind of went over those mountains, like I left San Jose behind me, and it was refreshing to be in a community of, free thinking, happy people. University of California at Santa Cruz, I lived right below it. And it's a great area. I loved it. So, and Watsonville is about 30 miles away from Santa Cruz, another seaside community, kind of an agricultural center. I've seen a video of you on Pleasure Point, so I'm assuming you know where this town is. Of course I do. And Pleasure Point, I did a video on this channel you can watch there. Anyways, this event I'm about to describe happened in the summer months, and I don't recall the exact day, but I'm guessing it was about 10 to 12 years ago. A friend of mine and I were driving from Santa Cruz to Watsonville on Highway 1 South. Highway 1 South is the highway that's closest to the ocean, that you can drive all the way around Monterey Bay and further all the way down towards Los Angeles. The sun had just went down and it was beginning to get dark, but still pre-headlight hours. I was sitting in the passenger seat, my friend was driving. We were having a conversation when out of the corner of my eye to the right, I saw something appear that caught my attention. As I looked over to my right, I noticed that whatever I had seen, my friend did also. We both immediately fixed our eyes on what it was. The first thing I noticed was that whatever it is, it had blinking lights and did not appear to be a plane. There is a small municipal airport very close in proximity to where I was, but this wasn't a plane. It was too low. I'm guessing 300 to 500 feet in elevation, and it did not appear to have the shape of a plane and seemed to be hovering in a fixed location. Had it been there before I noticed it, or did it just appear? I don't know. But by the time it caught our attention, it was only there for no more than a few seconds before it took off at a speed that was faster than humanly possible. It was fast, very fast. It seemed to dip down a bit as it traveled from our right to our left, directly over the freeway and straight towards a cluster of large trees on the other side of the roadway. This thing was headed straight into the trees that were a couple 100 feet high, probably eucalyptus trees in that area, and was at the very last moment somehow maneuvered and went up over the trees with incredible precision. As soon as it had disappeared out of sight, we both looked at each other like, what the heck was that? We both knew exactly what it was and what we had just witnessed. I'd always been a skeptical person of most things, especially UFOs. I was forever changed that day and know that whatever was controlling that thing was far beyond human capability. In the days following, I put a lot of thought into what I had seen and tried to figure out how that kind of maneuverability was possible, even for ETs. What I came up with was kind of interesting. The way this thing headed towards the trees and wrapped over them got me thinking that maybe it's not able to run into things that are connected to the earth or grounded. Maybe that's why we can hardly even hear them or ever see them crashing. Maybe it's like a magnet and is able to use that as protection and is repelled from other things that are grounded. I've watched a lot of your videos and have to take all your evidence and parallel coincidences into consideration. I believe that water and granite are both factors in this equation. I was less than 5 miles from the Pacific Ocean and less than 10 miles from a granite quarry and several others in that area. Who can solve the equation? I wish I knew. But I can't think of a person that has done more work into piecing together all of this than you, Dave. Hope you got something out of this, and I hope it adds to another piece to the puzzle. Keep up all the hard work and dedication. The work you do for families and whose loved ones is very honorable and courageous. God bless. Thank you. I read that for a multitude of reasons. First of all, it's close to my heart because I spent so many years right here where this happened. And thanks for the story. So I have some people that are very, very close to me who honestly think they probably think I'm nuts. They don't believe in UFOs. They don't believe in Bigfoot. They don't believe in the paranormal. They don't believe in anything like that. And whenever anyone came up to me and they were near me, they'd walk away. They wouldn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear what people say. Nothing. And these people are still extremely insulated. They don't want to hear this. They don't want to know this. They think the work I'm doing on missing people, they think is all garbage. They don't think anything's really happening out of the normal. They think this is all normal. And I have given up trying to get through to them. It's sad because these are very smart people. And the odd thing is that I know so many super smart people that have a high level of common sense and can readily identify what's abnormal and what's not, and they're willing to look at it. Yet other people are never willing to look at it. Like I said, they're very close to me. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating because they have such a low opinion of me because of the work I do and what I'm willing to look at. Sorry. Guess what it is what it is. Next story. Here's how the story was told to me by a friend whose grandfather was a New York Police Department captain back in 1952. So one night, I guess it would be third watch, this person gets hit by a bus and dies. The police captain was the only one in the squad room at the time of the event, so he took the call and headed downstairs across the street to the morgue. They were surprised to see a captain, someone of his rank, come into the room. As this person's grandfather told it, he was bored and didn't think it would take, the captain was bored and didn't think it would take all that long to identify the victim and send a couple of underlings out to notify the next of kin. To the amazement of the coroner, the man was wearing period clothes of the late 19th century. He had money on him from the same time period, 1885, and some papers that had a name on some of the papers with the name of Mr. William Fletcher, and a very nice antique walking stick with a silver handle. Making a long story short, the captain started looking at the missing person reports going back at least a week. Oh, and if I didn't mention it, before he got hit by a bus. No, he couldn't find anything about this guy anywhere, so finally, for curiosity, he decided to go back into the missing person archives for the years 1885 and forward, looking for that name, William Fletcher. Sure enough, he finds a guy matching the description of Mr. Fletcher for June 8, 1886. Let me tell you, this captain, unusual guy, most would not give a garbage about it. Now me, if I had seen this, I might have went back into the archives to look on my days off, but a lot of guys would not. Especially rank guys. And the name of the missing report, so Mr. Fletcher, sure enough, he finds a guy matching the description of Mr. Fletcher for June 1886. And the name of the missing person report is Mr. William Fletcher. It also said that there was a wife and 2 kids that he had. A daughter and a son, Franklin Fletcher, is the son's name. He writes down the address and decides to go for a ride. Now, left off what he went through for a week looking to find out who this guy is. He pulled up the address and walked up to the door. He knocked on the door and a nice-looking lady in her 60s answered. He introduced himself. She asked him to come inside. He began to tell her about a man who had been hit by a bus and ended up in the morgue. He asked her if Mr. Fletcher lived there or has lived there in the past. She said no, but she began to tell him a story about her grandfather whom she never met. Her father told her that one night his father went out for a walk like he did every night, but one night he didn't come back. The family reported him missing and he was never found. The police said at the time that he probably just took off, but the family was adamant that he would never do that. She then pulled out a photo album and there was a family picture and there was Mr. Fletcher. No, the captain told his grandson in this story, it was him. And it took the captain by surprise. Could this man have been transported back in time, held, and then released back into society at the time of this captain's meeting? I think it's possible. In fact, in some ways, I think it's probably likely that it did happen. Because how else could you explain that? You could ID the man by the picture. He's wearing timepieces of the 1800s. I've heard similar stories before. And it's part of that portal. Interesting. So, talk about the current cases that are going on right now in our world. And friends, we got a lot of strange things going on. I mean, a lot of really strange things going on. And I just heard today that there's a super high amount of mental illness and suicides happening in San Francisco, Seattle, and Portland. You couple that with an average 3-day weekend in Chicago, and there's up to 50 homicides and 100 to 200 people shot. What the heck is going on? Why aren't the politicians putting a policeman on every corner and protecting all the people, the nice people in those communities? Why aren't they doing something? It makes me irate. Sorry, lost track. So, there's a current story going on right now, and talk about it. It's in Grand Teton National Park. Individual's first name is Cian, McLaughlin, 27 years old, from Dublin, Ireland. He was last seen June 8th of this year, late in the afternoon, and he had a job in Jackson, Wyoming, which is really the big town in that area. And he was a bartender and a musician. Now, he had come from Chamonix, France, where he was a snowboard instructor. And in Jackson Hole, he did that for a number of months before the season ended. So during the summer, he's a bartender and he's a musician, and during the winter, he teaches snowboarding. Pretty cool lifestyle, if you ask me. And he attended the Dublin Institute of Technology when he was younger. Smart guy. And he liked the outdoors. That's why he lived in the communities he chose. He was last seen wearing a tank top and shorts. And everyone believed he was just out for a day hike because he didn't have a backpack. And he left his vehicle at the Lupine Meadows trailhead. And who is this man? Well, this is the bulletin that the Park Service put out on Mr. McLaughlin. And you can see that they are serious about this, which is good. He has a strong Irish accent. So he parks at the trailhead. and he starts walking. Lupine Meadows Trailhead. It's not that far from his residence in Jackson to the trailhead. So here's a little map I made for you. So let's follow this. So down here is Jackson, Wyoming. It's only like 4 or 5 miles up into here. Lupine Meadows Trailhead. Parks his car. He walks 1+ mile, and here he's seen by another hiker. So I want you to look at the map while I'm talking so you can kind of get what's going on. So a resident does see him on the afternoon of June 8th when he parked his car in the late afternoon, early evening at the Bradley Taggart Moraine, and he was headed towards south of Taggart Lake. Taggart Lake is this little lake right here. That's where he was last seen. So, but that resident who saw him, didn't know anything was going on, left the next day for a 2-week trip to Europe, came back and saw that Mr. McLaughlin was missing and immediately contacted the Park Service and told them about where he had been seen. And they refocused their efforts into this area. And they've been focusing on it since. This is just because of days off and things. This is probably Mr. McLaughlin's 1 or 2 times into the wilderness. This is grizzly bear area. But he probably would have seen others, I'm guessing, in that region. Closed circuit TV shows him entering the park at 2:15 in the afternoon through the Moose entrance point. They confirmed it was him. 2:15 is late to be starting a hike, even a day hike in some instances. But it was probably hot, so I kind of get that. But there's a massive search, massive, canines, helicopters, planes. And look at that area around Taggart Lake in the Teton National Park, Grand Teton. It's a gorgeous area. And what's there? A lot of water. A lot of granite. So, Mr. McLaughlin, even though he's a snowboarder and he's a bartender, he's also an intellect, a smart guy to get into the Irish School of Technology. Hasn't been found. And that was, he disappeared June 8th, was reported missing June 13th after he didn't report to work. So there were several days there that he was gone and nobody had reported him yet. Issue of concern. So the Park Service has now given up on the primary search for him. They don't know where he went. They don't know what his plans were. And as of right now, there's no new leads. So, National Park Service is in charge of this search, and no new leads as of right now. Hope Mr. McLaughlin is found soon. Now the next story, very strange one in my world. His name was Matthew Pendergrast, 23 years old. The next 2 stories, high intellect stories. Student at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. He was a senior on December 1st, 2000. He was about ready to graduate. He'd gone over a year because he spent the previous year studying in Granada, Spain. He was a Spanish major, and he spoke really good Spanish. He spent the previous summers at a residence in the Dominican Republic for children that were abandoned. And there was a big institution there, and he had volunteered his time. He was raised in Atlanta, and his dad was a physician, plastic surgeon. In high school in Atlanta, he ran cross country and played drums. He was called an outstanding musician and a very engaging young man. So the Thanksgiving before the 1st of December 2000, he had seen his family, spent time with them. Sister said he seemed like he was in great spirits. His friends said he was in great spirits. On December 1st, in the early morning hours, he left home, headed for a Spanish class, quarter to a half mile away at school. He was driving his 1998 Toyota 4Runner, and at about 2 o'clock that day, some hunters were east of Little Rock, Arkansas, and they found his 4Runner parked on a highly remote dirt road with the keys in the ignition. So let me go with this for you. First of all, this is Matthew. He's still a missing person. So the hunters call the sheriff. The sheriff calls Fish and Game, because this is an area that had a lot of fishing and a lot of hunting people. So the vehicle's found 120 miles from Memphis on the edge of the Bayou Meta, M-E-T-A, in Lanoke County, Arkansas. Well, they called the dad. The dad says, hey, he should be in school. They call his school. They check his house. He's missing. They bring in search and rescue dogs, helicopters, over 100 searchers and divers. 100 yards from the car, pay close attention, they find all of Matthew's clothes, including his underwear, socks, everything in a pile. Kind of strange. So, this is Little Rock. His vehicle's found next to a river, and this is a road called Kerr Road. And his vehicle is found on a dirt road off of Kerr Road. Water everywhere in this area. It's a bayou environment. Very disturbing. Now, I tell you this story because there's a journal in his car, and there's writings. We only found one source for this. I don't put 100% credence into it, but I tell you it. In the journal, he talked about immortality, walking into water, and nobody knew what that was about because he didn't talk to anybody about it. So searchers used FLIR, they did flyovers, found nothing other than those clothes, socks, and shoes. Now obviously there's water everywhere. He's a high intellect, very social. They had planes covering that area for weeks. His dad came out to the scene, drove the vehicle back to Atlanta. The parents put out a several $1,000 reward for their son. There were all kind of rumors saying, oh, he ran away and this was all staged. And there's no evidence he had any mental health issues. He had plans for the next spring to go back to the Dominican Republic and do his service. He was a highly, highly smart, social, committed individual to doing good for the world. What happened? Did he hear something in his head? And I am not implying that he was mentally unstable. Did he get a message somehow? Why would he flee to a super remote spot 120 miles from where he lives and disappear there? How did he ever find that place? So I tell you this because let's think about all the rest of the people that disappeared. We have a little bit of insight into Matthew because he did write about immortality and walking into water. Where did he get that information? I'd like to know. I know his parents are devastated, saddened, and their life has changed forever. I feel for you. But now you know. The next case, another one of super high intellect. And this one, people have asked me, Dave, you have any cases on Hawaii? Yeah, I do, several. Stephen and Jenny Reisberg. Stephen, 34 years old. Jenny, 28. Jenny was a postgraduate student at Harvard University. Stephen was a physician and went missing September 9th, 1990 in Kauai, Hawaii. Jenny was the daughter of a highly, highly prestigious Beijing cardiologist. Came to the United States to study, met Stephen, and they were married about a year before they disappeared. Stephen is just not your normal intellect. He scored 3 perfect scores on the SAT. That's phenomenal. That's how smart the guy was. Well, they were married in Boston and they resided in Boston. They left that city August 29th on a planned vacation. They flew to Salt Lake City, rented a car, and they drove to Grand Teton National Park. And they spent some time there. Then they decided on the spur of the moment to go to Hawaii and spend a couple more days. And they landed in Kauai on September 6th. They rented a car at Alamo, and they said that they'd have the car back by the 8th of September. And that made sense because they both had to be back in Boston on the 9th. Well, on September 9th, a friend of theirs in Boston and a professor realized they weren't there. They thought, well, maybe they're extending out the trip. And they weren't reported missing until September 24th. On September 27th, Kauai Fire and police put a helicopter up, and they found their car parked. This is the island of Kauai. Car was parked at Pui'okila Lookout. Dramatic fluted peaks and a valley views. This area right here is super remote. Here's the Alakai Wilderness, and there's a swamp in there called the Alakai Swamp. We'll get to that in a second. So they parked their car there. Searchers got into the car and found both backpacks and their boots. A little weird, but they thought maybe they were just going for a short walk. And they kept searching, and they did a 5-day SAR with canines, helicopters, and about 100 police and firemen. They found nothing. Stephen's dad got upset and made a big stink, like you should, to the state of Hawaii and got the search carried over. Stephen was a medical director for the New England Medical Center in Cambridge. He wasn't just your average physician. He was super smart and way up there in the organization. There were reports that the couple was seen in the weeks afterwards at an airport in Hilo, Hawaii. Now, that is not abnormal. And in fact, a lot of people that are missing get reported by others as being seen. And turns out later, they were dead weeks ago, but I put no credence in the observation. So they disappeared in 1990. There was an article in 1996 about this event. And there was a consensus of friends and emergency workers that these two fell off the face of the earth. That's what the article said. They were intellects, super smart people. This is a very, very, very rare double disappearance. You gotta understand that if I'm deep in the woods and I break my leg and I'm not on a trail, chances of me getting out of there are almost zero. But if I'm hiking with somebody, they can go out and get help. And that's what usually happens when you're together. One leaves, one stays. In this incident, to have 2 people disappear and nobody found is so strange. Even if they fell off a cliff, the helicopters flying that area would have found their bodies by now. During the search for the Reisbergs, there was heavy rain, and it talked about how that encumbered the search effort. So we're talking about 30 years now they've been missing. They've never showed up anywhere. Nobody's ever reported seeing them since, and there's no leads. I call that weird. So there's Stephen Reisberg, his wife Jenny. Jenny was from Beijing. Stephen was born and raised in New Jersey, and they both lived in Boston. For Jenny to be going to Harvard on a postgraduate degree, she had to be brilliant. I already told you Stephen was brilliant. And that carries on with this consistency of high intellects disappearing. This isn't just happenstance, folks. I promise you, if I had heard of somebody who lived in a hotel on Skid Row in a city and they disappeared, I'm looking at it. They disappear, they're found in the river, I'd be talking about it. Disappeared and they were found in a fountain, I'd be talking about it. That doesn't happen. I don't understand why these things happen the way they do, but I just am relating you the facts. So, I've given you 3 big cases, 4 people who are missing. Mr. McLaughlin, Grand Tetons National Park, June 8th of this year, not found. Matthew Pendergrast, December 1st of 2000, disappears from Memphis, Tennessee, and he's found east of Little Rock, Arkansas. He's not found, but his vehicle is found east of Little Rock, Arkansas, and his clothes are spread out 100 yards away. What's that about? Especially in December. In Little Rock, it's cold. And then the Reisberg, Stephen and Jenny, disappear September 9th, 1990, Kauai. I've been reading the comments on the channels, and I really, really appreciate everything you've stated. I like the way you support each other and myself. That's the sign of a good person. Many of you have written to me about your suicidal thoughts and your tendencies and how you've thought through those things in the past, and I know you're appreciative that someone's talking about that. Now I'll continue to talk about it. And I like the way we step up and we make kind comments to those people, trying to pick them up and let them know that others care. And I read a couple of comments there and people saying nobody really cared, or nobody really cares. I really care. And I know there's a lot of you out there that care also. It hurts me that people think that nobody cares. It's so not true. I think part of the human divine is that we have that in our soul to care for each other. That's why if we saw somebody hurt, we'd run to aid them. We wouldn't run away. It's in our soul. So thank you. Thank you for being this good village of people. And we'll keep trying to build it. And I'll keep feeding you this information. Please keep posting on it on social media. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed. And if you're out there in the woods and you're thinking about getting somebody a gift, I have no financial interest in any of these. Get them, and they're a hiker or hunter, get them a personal locator beacon. Now I say go read the reviews for the personal locator beacons on Amazon, make a decision on your point of purchase from there. But usually I find the reviews are pretty accurate. I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of each one of you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have a good day.